Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to introduce our next speaker, Nathan Babbitt, whose experience lies in fire safety and community preparedness. With a background in property management and extensive experience as a fire inspector at Orange County Fire Authority, Nathan brings a wealth of knowledge to the table. Since joining pre-fire management section, he has taken a proactive approach in wildfire prevention, focusing on risk evaluation, fuels mitigation, and community education. Today, Nathan will enlighten us on wildfire risk mitigation, financial impacts, shedding light on strategies vital for our community's safety and resilience. Nathan.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Nathan Babbitt. I'm a fire inspector with the Orange County Fire Authority, currently assigned to our Community Wildfire Mitigation Unit. We are responsible for vegetation enforcement of defensible space and fuel mods in areas that the state has identified as very high fire hazard severity zones. Today's presentation, we're going to go over vegetation management, home hardening. But before we start that, we kind of want to get into just some fire history throughout the county. Many of you are on boards and property managers have probably seen this. We include this in all of our presentations because it's good to know, what potential is out there and the history of fire in Orange County, because they do have a tendency to repeat. So on the first slide, we have several fires that occurred during our typical fire season when we see Santa Ana wind events. Santa Ana winds generally cause our larger fires, thousands of acres, and have destroyed hundreds of structures during them. So tomorrow is actually the 30th anniversary of the Laguna Fire in 1993. It started in the Bomber Canyon, Shady Canyon area of Irvine. Santa Ana winds blew it up over into the city of Laguna Beach, and it destroyed 347 structures. Then in October 21st, 2007, we had the Santiago Fire, started out in Santiago Canyon. Santa Ana winds blew it up into the eastern half of Irvine, and it destroyed or damaged 56 structures. We had the Freeway Complex Fire, November 15th, 2008, burned 30,000 acres and destroyed 381 structures in Anaheim Hills and the eastern half of Yorba Linda. This actually was two fires originally. There was the landfill fire in Brea and the freeway fire down in Yorba Linda, and they merged overnight in Chino Hill State Park overnight on November 15th. And then 3 years ago today, we had the Silverado Fire, which again started in Santiago Canyon, burned up into the eastern half of Irvine, Portola Springs, Orchard Hills area. And then later that afternoon, the Blue Ridge Fire started up again in Chino Hills State Park on the eastern half of Yorba Linda. And the winds that day pushed it in a similar pattern as the Freeway Complex Fire, and same with the Silverado, similar pattern as the Santiago Fire in 2007. Now, you heard this phrase, fire season is year round. So anytime we do get these offshore wind events, it can be anytime during the year, we do see, fires. So for example, with the Emerald Fire, it burned February 12th, 2022. It's in the same burn scar or burn pattern as the Laguna Beach Fire in 93, started above the community of Emerald Bay, and the winds pushed it down into the backside of the community. And then in December of 20, we had the Bonfire, which started out in the Bond Canyon, Williams Canyon area. It burned the eastern and southern half of Santiago Canyon, and again, started in December, but we had an offshore wind event, hot, dry winds, low humidities, and it really allowed these fires to spread. And then most recently, we do have one-offs. We had the Coastal Fire. It burned 200 acres and destroyed over 20 structures down in Laguna Niguel. This fire, it was high humidities, cool temperatures, some strong winds, started down the bottom of the canyon, and the winds forced it up over the ridgeline into Coronado Point. The interesting thing about this fire and what we really push is not only vegetation management, but also home hardening. The vegetation out here for the community was compliant. Many homes did not have direct flame on them. They were lost due to embers, and that's because the homes that were lost were built in the 80s and 90s and weren't built to current Chapter 7A or home hardening standards. So our next slide here, this was a study done by CAL FIRE for this bar graph. This was damaged by fire hazard severity zones. So this picture is Laguna Niguel area. Everything in the red the state has identified as very high fire hazard severity. That is where we are legally allowed to enforce vegetation, defensible space, fuel modification, and vegetation management. When you start getting into the high and the moderate, and the high is the orange color and the moderate is yellow, It's really, from our standpoint, there are some things that can be done from a local level, but it's really just recommendations. But what this bar graph shows is that if you're in any type of MAP fire severity zone, even though it may not be legally required by the state, your community should still be looking at defensible space and vegetation management. Because like the bar graph shows, this was total structures damaged by fires within fire hazard severity zones. So some of the larger areas are in the moderate and the high. So just because you're not in the red doesn't mean you shouldn't be also doing defensible space and vegetation in your communities. This next slide, we've got some laws and regulations. So this is where we get our enforcement capability. So we have two responsibility areas in the county. We have local responsibility area and state responsibility area. Local responsibility area is outlined, all our enforcement capabilities are outlined in government code. State responsibility areas are outlined in the public resource code. Local responsibility area means a local agency or county has responsibility for fire suppression, fire inspection, plan review, all that. They take the financial burden on. State responsibility area is handled by the state of California through CAL FIRE. We in Orange County are unique because we're one of 6 contract counties. So we've told the state of California that we will handle CAL FIRE's job in state responsibility areas in Orange County. Like I said, we're one of 6 counties that do that. So as inspectors, when we're in Coto de Caza, we're acting on behalf of CAL FIRE. But when we're in Laguna Niguel, we're acting on behalf of Orange County Fire Authority. We also have some locally adopted codes and ordinances. So the California Fire Code, chapters 3 and 49. 49 deals with the wildland-urban interface. We have CO5 guidelines for field modifications. We have vegetation management, maintenance guidelines for property owners, and defensible space guidelines for homeowner association common areas. This is key because we've gone through some CCNRs of communities, and it's actually written in some community CCNRs that the HOA will perform defensible space on interior slopes. So if you're not aware of that, I would have someone review your CCNRs just to double check that. Now we have two upcoming legislation and some recent legislation that will affect homeowners associations and communities in Orange County. These were passed by the state, so we had July 1st of 2021. It's formerly known as Assembly Bill 38. We at OCFA call it the Defensible Space Disclosure. So currently, under the law, the seller of a property located in a high or very high fire hazard severity zone needs to disclose to the buyer if the property is compliant with defensible space requirements or enter into an agreement with the buyer. So right now we're only performing this in the very high, but as of January 2024, we will be going into the high per the law. So the way this works is if someone is selling their home, we come out and perform a defensible space inspection. We either issue a compliance letter and it goes in the escrow packet, or we issue a correction notice, and that also goes in the escrow packet as just a disclosure form. It does not hold up the sale of the property, but it is something that needs to be put in the escrow packet for the sale to proceed. And then we got one coming statewide in 2025. It's called the Immediate Zone, Assembly Bill 3074. This is nothing combustible, no combustible material in the immediate zone, which is the first 5 foot around a structure. This is combustible vegetation, this is patio furniture, this is anything combustible. It cannot be within 5 foot of the structure. We at OCFA have taken upon ourselves that if you are submitting a new fuel modification plan in the very high fire hazard severity zone, after January 23, we are enforcing it on new properties after January 23 to try and get ahead of it. But again, it goes effect statewide 2025 for enforcement. So when we do vegetation inspections, we look at 2 types. We have field modification and defensible space. So field modification is a planned landscape design that reduces the threat of wildfire. It creates a fire-resistant divider between homes that are adjacent to areas of natural plant life or open space. Field modifications are a specific planting plan. When we perform our inspections of communities with field modification, we will review the plan, go out and ensure that the plan is being met. If it's not, we will issue a notice and have it corrected. On the cover sheet of the plans, maintenance is twice per year at a minimum, but we would recommend just to stay on top of it. It's not a bad idea, but twice a year at a minimum, generally in the spring and the fall. And the field modification plans are divided into 4 zones. So we have, like in this photo, you can see we have what's called A and a B zone, which is irrigated and a specific planting plan. And then further out, we have a C and a D zone, which are dry zones. And the total distance is 170 feet. So the A and the B like I said, are irrigated in specific plantings. C and D are dry and can be native vegetation. D zone, the native plants are thinned to 30%. C zone, the native plants are thinned to 50%, and then it hits the irrigated zones. As you can see in the photos, the idea is as the fire comes up over the ridge, it hits the D zone, loses some little bit of energy, hits the C zone, loses more energy, and then hits the irrigated zone and reduces direct flame and radiant heat on the community, which allows our firefighters to focus more on any spot fires from embers that may be igniting on the interior of the community. And then if there isn't a field modification plan, so this would go for individual homeowners, and we will do what's called defensible space inspection. So it's vegetation management within 100 foot of a structure or to the property line. It is removal of dead and dying plant material only. There is no planting restrictions. We can make recommendations. So if you have a palm tree that's declining and it's removed, we would highly recommend that not be replanted, but we cannot prevent someone from replanting a palm, but we would highly recommend that's not advisable. Again, it's looking at horizontal and vertical separation of plant material, so making sure that trees are limbed up appropriately, making sure that shrubs are spread out, and we don't have just a mass of fuel for the fire to burn through, and then also reducing ground cover to 2 foot. So defensible space allows us, gives your home a shot of surviving a wildfire, but it also gives our firefighters a comfortable space to work to prevent direct flame on your structure as well. So it goes 2 ways. So what we learned from the Laguna Fire too was we're pushing a hardened home is a defensible home. So vegetation management is only part of it. We also are focusing on home hardening. This is building standards that are in the California Building Code Chapter 7A. It's certain construction features that reduce ember intrusion, direct flame on your homes as well. So home hardening reduces risk from radiant heat, direct flame, and ember intrusion. So on the bottom here, we have radiant heat. That's when the fire's a little bit away, but the heat from the fuel burning in the rear slope can actually, preheat the structure and cause it to easily catch on fire if an ember were to be introduced. We have direct flame contact. That is when a wall of flame just rolls through the property. And then we have flying embers and brands. Most homes are lost due to ember intrusion, and that's what home hardening kind of really focuses on, is ensuring that embers don't have a way to get lodged into your structures to ignite them. So home hardening is actually found, the features are found in the California Building Code Chapter 7A. Chapter 7A applies to building materials, systems, and/or assemblies using the exterior design of construction of new buildings within the WIWI, but they can also be used to update older structures to the current standard. This is a photo on the bottom here. The left-hand side was built with combustible siding, open eaves. It did not have the immediate zone, clearance of combustible vegetation away from the structure. The one on the right, non-combustible siding, no combustible vegetation or material near the structure, and they threw embers at it, and as you can see, the one on the left is not doing so well. Roofs, for home hardening features, roofs would be Class A non-combustible, so asphalt shingle or tile. The thing with a lot of these, what we're going to go through is just maintenance. So if you notice that your roof tiles are a little loose or there's gaps, fix the roof. It doesn't have to mean you have to redo your roof, but just maintain your roof appropriately. Same thing with gutters. Gutters, we would prefer to see vinyl, but the idea behind gutters mostly is just keeping them free of debris, so putting screens on top so nothing can build up, or cleaning them out regularly. Eaves would be either, top tier would be fully enclosed, or just closing gaps larger than 1/4 inch. So you can simply walk around your house. If you see any gap that's larger than 1/4 inch, put some painter's caulk, put paint over it, and that could be sufficient as well. Vents, we want to replace 1/4 inch mesh, which older homes are built for, with 1/8 inch mesh. That really helps prevent embers from getting up into your attics. Windows, ideally dual pane, metal framed with tempered exterior glass. Idea being if the outer glass pops, because it's tempered, it won't fall away, and it prevents any hot gases or flame from getting into your home. Exterior siding, same thing, non-combustible preferable, but if you just maintain it, keeping gaps closed, keeping combustible material away from your siding. Decks and patio covers, additionally, just maintenance. If there's any gaps, if you're going to replace your deck, replace it with the non-combustible material. If you're going to go replace your patio cover, replace it with the non-combustible material. But the reality is just basic maintenance of keeping gaps and things properly painted and maintained does go a long way in preventing ember intrusion. So these are some photos that we got of how home hardening can make a difference. So in this photo up here, we have unmaintained vegetation. It allowed radiant heat to build up on the structure. The vinyl frame windows in the photo were dual pane, but the vinyl started to melt and the pane started to fall out. This is combustibles near structure. So this is within 5 foot. This is patio furniture. Embers landed onto the patio furniture, ignited, blew out the window, and started to go up underneath the wall of the structure. In this photo, what you're not seeing is, it looks not too bad, but what you're not seeing is the damage done inside the home from firefighters trying to prevent the fire from crawling up in the walls. This is a combustible accessory structure. So again, if vegetation had been maintained properly, you would have reduced the radiant heat on it. If it was non-combustible, it wouldn't have started to ignite anyway. Luckily, we had firefighters there that were able to put it out before it really started going. This was up from Santa Rosa. This is a garage unit. This was a result of mulch. Embers blew in, ignited the mulch, and it started to crawl up from the weep screen behind the stucco. A lot of new homes now are being built with foam insulation on the exterior. So the mulch ignited, it went up, crawled up underneath the weep screen, and started going behind the stucco. Again, what you're not seeing is the damage done interior from the firefighters verifying that it's not crawling through the rest of the wall. And then finally, this photo is from the first one, windows with radiant heat. The vinyl frames, as you can see in it, started to melt, and the exterior panels started to fall out. So this is that immediate zone. So the immediate zone is the first 5 foot around the structure. So things that we want to avoid is do not use organic mulch, keep vegetation away from the structure, and this is only within 5 foot. Keep vegetation away from the structure, avoid placing or storing combustible materials near the home, and no combustible construction, wood, vinyl, all that. Okay. Some safer alternatives would be hardscape, gravel, pavers, concrete. When we say gravel, I mean more like river rock. Don't want you to put pea gravel and have your landscapers come through and blow it all over your yard. Low-growing, fire-resistant plants, less than 2 foot tall, so succulents and flower beds. Relocating your combustible materials away from the home or covering them. And then non-combustible construction features like fencing and patio covers and decks. So this was a demonstration we did about a month ago. This was done at our training grounds up in Irvine. This was done by the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. This is the immediate zone demonstration. Home on the left had combustible siding, open eaves, wood fencing, combustible vegetation, and mulch up to the structure. Home on the right had a 5 foot immediate zone. So pavers, there's mulch and plants 5 foot away from it, non-combustible siding, and a wrought iron fence. We ignited the mulch, turned some fans on, and just let it burn. And the thing to point out too was this was done on a day with high humidities, no wind, low temperatures. So you can really see how it gets going, and if there was a Santa Ana event, how it could go. Let's see. So they're igniting the mulch. We turned some fans on, started to blow the fire up towards the structure. It gets up in that corner, starts to ignite the fence. The vortex is created. It gets getting pulled up into the eaves. What's interesting to note too is the fence, because it's wood, it actually acts like a candle wick, and its fire is creeping towards the neighboring structure. So if the wood fence had continued, it would have gone along the fence line into the other structure. There was a fire in Colorado that I believe over 1,000 homes lost, and they contributed a huge part of it to wood privacy fencing. And as you can see too, while this is all going on, it's about over 30 minutes, the mulch down on the right side that was 5 foot away, it still was smoldering and smoldered long after our guys went in and put it out. So that's the idea behind the immediate zone, is removing combustible material away from the home 5 foot. Now, we did work with the Metropolitan Water District of Orange County because obviously we want to have drought-tolerant vegetation, but also fire-resistant vegetation, and we want to save water as well, be water-wise. So this is a little landscape plan that was created using California natives, drought-tolerant California natives, and fire-resistant California natives. So we have inorganic mulch with decomposed granite and gravel strategically placed around. We have hardscape to break up fuel loads, so there's boulders, large boulders to kind of add some variety to the landscaping as well. We use fire-resistant native vegetation. We removed undesirable and invasive vegetation, which can be found on our CO5 attachment. And then we also limited and only use organic mulch strategically. So we kept traditional bark mulch in the design, but it was pulled outside 5 foot from the structure and put in areas where it couldn't crawl up into a shrub, into a tree. So in this far back corner, we put it under some of the taller vegetation. And then up against the structure, as you go out, the vegetation gets larger. So we had succulents and flowers within the first 5 foot, and then you get further, you start to see shrubs, and you get even more farther out, that's when you start to see trees. But everything also was maintained defensible spacing-wise, so nothing is growing into each other. So this is our website, OCFA Ready, Set, Go. We have more information on our website, ton of flyers. We offer home assessments. You can do it yourself online, or if you would like one of us to come out, we can come out as well and walk you through it.
Yeah, that was an outstanding presentation. And again, it was so much information. So again, Orange County Fire Authority does have a booth out there. But this time we're going to ask Diane Rifkin, who's the second vice president of Moltenigo Water District, a dedicated community leader, who brings 30 years of experience in legal, attorney recruiting, and public relations sectors to her role. Her passion for achieving results and community service shines through, and she will take the stage to thank our supporting businesses and agencies and share more exciting opportunity. Diane.
Good morning, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here with you. These have been great presentations. What's really important also today is to recognize those businesses and agencies that have supported us so much in this cause, and they've made it possible, and a lot of them are present today, and I'd really like to acknowledge them while you're here. We're really privileged to have the representatives from diverse supporting organizations, and they include Community Association Institute, Orange County Fire Authority, International Society of Arboriculture, the Municipal Water District of Orange County, Orange County Vector Control, Orange County Waste and Recycling. Thank you so much, because your involvement exemplifies a collective commitment to our cause of conservation and to our community and environment, and your presence really strengthens our resolve and significantly contributes to the success of H2O for HOAs. Thank you.